So, thank you for joining us today. This is an interview for ARDD 2022 for the Inspire Longevity program, where we are trying to inspire high schoolers and the next generation to be longevity researchers and help with aging. So, for people who don't know about your work and who you are, could you give a brief introduction and explain your research on longevity?
For sure, and thank you, Zach, for having me here. It's a pleasure to share a little bit of what we do and inspire, especially young people. So my name is Marco Quarta. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Rubedo Lifesciences, which is a longevity therapeutic company, meaning that we are targeting the biology of aging to treat age-related diseases and eventually aging itself, which is the aspirational goal. And we do that by targeting the bad cells that are emerging with age and driving the aging process, and so diseases. And there are many of those. Senescent cells is one, but there are many others. So dysfunctional stem cells, profibrotic cells, etc. So we built a platform. It's a computational AI-driven platform based on single-cell multiomics to identify those cells, even if they're rare. And once you find them, so you know which is the right therapeutic target, we can dig into that and translate what we learn into a chemistry that we develop. We have a chemistry platform to make small molecules that are special because they're engineered to activate only inside those cells and not in the others, either to kill them or for other interventions. So you don't affect the good cells, which is critical, right? If you want to have therapies that are safe and very selective, especially in the elderly, people that have comorbidities, frailty, etc. So finding the bad apples and get rid of them, the bad cells. That's what we do at Rubedo. I'm a scientist by training. Prior to be at Rubedo, I was at Stanford University leading a research group focusing on aging, regenerative medicine, rejuvenation. And I've been involved in other areas in starting companies. Another company that I started recently that I co-founded is Turn Biotechnologies, which instead is focusing on epigenetic reprogramming using a technology similar to the RNA vaccines, but to deliver and reprogram transiently the epigenome to reverse the cellular age. And so that's the goal, is to treat the good apple, the good cells, before they go bad. And I really do see these two strategies complementary, critical in the future because they can work synergistically together. You need to do both. You cannot, even if you're healthy, but you cannot have bad cells in your body that are driving your inflammation that can drive cancer, etc. So you need to get rid of them. But you also want to prevent this and maintain your cells in a good state. So I hope that in the future, technology like that, therapies like that combined together can help to maintain the useful state for a longer time.
Amazing. Okay, so again, just to start off, could you explain how and why you are interested in longevity research? So your origin story.
Okay, that's a good question. Well, I started very, very young with this idea. I was inspired by, the idea of age and longevity as a very little kid. I was probably 5 or 6 years old. And when I decided that I wanted to cure aging, I thought that was possible, very naively. And so I literally remember I went to my mom and said, I know what I want to be. I want to be a scientist and I want to cure aging. And my mom said, okay, good luck with that, but I can help you. And luckily I have several scientists in the family. And literally, a year after, I had my little lab in my room with a chemistry kit and things like that, and microscope. And I've been on this mission for my whole life. Now, I'm definitely less naive now, but all my path and inspiration and studies and research and the companies that I've been involved has always been aligned with this personal mission that I have. So that was really my drive.
Awesome. So you think there's been a change in your motivation, like every day you get up and you go help with longevity and curing aging? Has there been a change in what motivates you, or it's still pretty similar?
I'd say it's pretty similar, but the major change, let's say over decades at this point of this journey, is that I'm becoming more and more passionate about the idea that I can give something back to people out of my science, knowing that I'm helping people. That's really I would like to see quality of life of people improving. I really believe this is so important, especially with growing aging population worldwide. It's going to be, we are really treating the future generations, I mean our generation, but really the future of somehow humanity. Because we need to be mindful about these problems. We need to make sure that people can age gracefully, and that I can see having impact that beyond health, right? These are a socio-economical impact. It could be a paradigm shift. We're pretty much the idea we could add one generation of people that are probably the wisest, people that live a long life and now they don't get sick and they retire and they can't really contribute anymore, probably at their peak of their life, but that could have a profound effect. Think about, if you know you're going to live longer or healthier, you have your time that you need to enjoy, you see your own life differently. You treat other people, even the environment, right? You would care about the place where you live in a different way. So I really care. I hope that this will have an impact on people's life, and that's my motivation.
Very, very, very cool. So I guess moving forward from your childhood and inspiration to more recent day. So you co-founded the Young European Biotech Network. And can you explain what that is and how it impacted that stage of your life and leading up to now?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, that's definitely a beautiful chapter of my life. I was finishing my undergrad studies, and then over my PhDs, where I was involved in starting these initiatives in Italy of initially students of biotechnology, which was a very new degree. It was a new emerging field. I was actually the first batch in the first university in Italy, in Bologna, where I studied for the very first course in biotechnology. And that one changed my mind. I was going to be a doctor, a physician, and do medicine. And then I decided to do biotechnology, which I thought was pretty cool. And then, so I was very passionate about that. And then followed, and every university in Italy did that, and then across Europe. So we started making those, let's say, student association in Bologna, and then coordinating across the other universities. And then we started to graduate, and then we started to have professionals. And so we created the National Italian Association of Biotechnologists as a professional organization for this new emerging job. And then we started to connect with other similar organizations in Europe. And so me and among the others organized this initial event, putting together people from all over Europe, and we started this organization, this network. We started remember there is this conference center of part of the University of Bologna is a castle. It's a beautiful medieval castle, and we had everybody coming there. We invited the executives from Big Pharma, from the European Commission research. It was a big event, and that was the start of that, and initiated a big movement. So we started with 5 European countries, and I was in the executive board member, then I became the chairman, and over my tenure, we grew to 13 European countries and thousands of people. We had the first big grant from the European Commission. That was the first that was granted by non-PIs, but just to young people, were very students or PhD students, etc. So we got $500,000 to run projects, interdisciplinary projects across different countries. And so and started to promote entrepreneurship and supporting career and projects. And eventually we joined the European Federation of Biotechnology, which is a big umbrella organization that really promotes and coordinates activities between pharma, between governments across Europe. And so I transitioned as an executive board member at the European Federation of Biotechnology for a couple of years, and really fostering this growth in the field, and always looking at how that can impact regenerative medicine, longevity. So as my personal interest, but in general as a career. So it was a beautiful experience. I learned a lot. Of course, it gave me lots of experience in management, in leadership, in entrepreneurial mindset, in networking. And the organization is still alive, still passed across generations, very active, and I'm pleased to help, if and when I can, but I'm pleased to see that they're still growing.
Great. So that kind of leads into my next question, actually. So I know originally you were more focused in academia, research, and that area, and then you transferred into entrepreneurship and business. So I was wondering, one, how was that change? What were the hard parts? What were the parts you needed to learn? And then any advice you would have for high schoolers who have interest in either science, longevity, or really anything, and how they can pursue their interest in an entrepreneurial way?
Yeah, that's also a very good question. So it's not that I suddenly changed. I spent a long time doing my career in science and tried to do my best to become the best scientist I could be. So trying to go to the best universities, work with the best people, publish the best journals, and learn from the best. But in parallel, what you mentioned earlier, this idea of being involved in organization or starting and founding organizations like the Young European Biotech Network back then is part of this process. During my PhD, I actually started a company. It was the first company where I'm involved. So it was very early on, but at the university in Italy where I was there, in Padua, doing a PhD, there was this business plan competition where you can, have to write the business plan, build a team, and they give you an angel that becomes an angel investor, and we won to this process. So they gave us the money, but to start the company, so you have to do it. And so we did it. And the company is still up and running. It was doing something very different than what I'm doing now, but that was a great experience. And I'm saying that because I always had this idea in mind. Now, on one hand, yes, I wanted to become a scientist and work on this field, but I also always knew that if you want to do something with your science, academia is not the place for that, because you have to take your basic knowledge and translate into application if you want to give something back to people. So it's not about making money, it's about doing something that people can use, and it's a whole different world and very complex effort. So it was a process for me. I started young, learning. Every experience gave me something. And then when I thought it was the right time, when I felt I was ready, when I thought my science and the science field was ready, etc., I did a transition. Now I left academia to be focused on the companies 100%. But again, for me it was a process. So my suggestion is start early. It's a process, and if you can do things in parallel, because and connecting the dots, it's the best things to do, right? There are the strong links and the so-called soft links that they all come together. So it's a journey, and I think finding the best people that can help, that can inspire you, can work and mentor you to help you build in this roadmap and do long-term plan is what I would suggest to do.
Okay. Yeah. So then adding on to that, you mentioned you went to Stanford and you also went to the University of Bologna. Am I saying that right?
Bologna.
Bologna.
Yes.
Okay, sorry. So what are your views on going to university and that level of education for high schoolers interested in longevity? Would you recommend going like PhD, not a PhD? What would you recommend?
Yeah, so this question is not a black and white answer. I think it goes back to first to understand what you want to do with your life and your career, what you really like and what you're passionate about. You can, if it's in the field of longevity, everything counts and the contributions are very different. So yes, there is a science and a scientist, but there are so many other layers from communication to development to business side to, it's all part of it, because you need all of that. It's such a complex mission, and it's important there are also multiple companies and so multiple people, because it's really a humanity effort. So firstly, I think you need to understand what you really want to do, what's your journey. And to get there are multiple ways. So going to academia is absolutely important, I think, if you want to become a scientist first, or at least learn the science. At least that should be the first step. How far in this process depends where you want to go. But I definitely recommend to find some of the best labs where you can go and just not learn techniques, right? Is learning the mindset, thinking the science in the right way is so important. And for example, you can go to university, undergrad, or do a master, and then move more into a company, taking roles that could be more business, or from there to have experience that are more could be consulting and learning, do an MBA and build a career in that direction. Or if you really want to go deep into the science, a PhD is fundamental if your aspiration is to lead this to the next level, either in academia or from there transition to a company where you can do amazing science. Something that I think should be clear, and it's changed a lot. Right in the past, you say your basic science of excellence was academia, and the industry was just developing. It's not true anymore, especially because doing great science requires so many resources now, and especially in the longevity field, all those early stage companies, they're doing amazing science too, and with the best people that left academia, with amazing resources and a team that is not just science, where you can really help you thinking what's beyond that, how you can make this happen and not get lost maybe in some too many philosophical diversions. So I would suggest that certainly moving into industry at some point is such an important aspect, unless your passion is really like contributing to finding key new knowledge, like advance the frontier and let others to develop from there. So it depends where you want to go. Certainly academia is a place where I would recommend to start, but not being stuck to that. There is a risk that once you're there, you feel like you're in the ivory tower, so you have to be into the master, the PhD, the postdoc, and try to get the tenure track. And maybe that's not what you need or you want. So you have to be careful of choosing your next step and the exit strategy.
Great. So very different for what, depending on what you want. Yeah.
Yes.
And then, so another question is something about failure and mistakes. So do you have any big failures, not failures, but mistakes that you learned from and could share with us?
Well, what do you learn from big mistakes or specific examples?
What do you learn from mistakes and also specific examples?
Well, I think, especially when you try to do something new, you typically don't know what you're doing very well, right? So making mistakes is inevitable. Otherwise, someone would have done it. So being ready to manage and mitigate risks and learn from mistakes is really fundamental, because that's how it's part of the journey. So that requires, I think, to be very mindful and also, work on yourself too, because that can be stressful or really demotivate you. But instead, I think it's so important to use the mistakes as a motivation, as a learning process. So that's super important. Now, for specific examples, I don't know, there are so many. I generally try to use, it's not like a mistake, but it's a learning process. So it becomes more than an error, is a challenge, and always thinking as much as possible outside the box to see how the challenge is an opportunity. So I typically never think this is not a mistake, this is just a new opportunity, and take it from there. And that's from any level, technical, from communication management. It happens all the time, and it's part of the process. So I generally don't say there are no mistakes, there are only challenges.
Great. And the last question of the interview is if you have any personal recommendations for high schoolers watching this video who want to pursue a career in science or longevity research, what would you tell them?
I would say expose yourself as much as possible to many different people with different culture, with different roles in different areas, in different places. Like to your point, doing university in US is very different than in Europe. And the path can be different. In Europe, it's more linear. Once you're in, and when you're out, you don't go back. In US, you can go in and out. You can go undergraduate, go to a company, go back to a master, go back to a company, then do a PhD later. I had a student who was 40 when he started his master, and then he did a PhD in the late 40s, and now he's in Europe from US. So I think it's important, expose yourself as much as possible to all different realities, so you can have an informed decision. That's the best way. So you find your best opportunities.
Great. Okay. So thank you so much for joining us today. I'm super excited to see you at ARDD 2022. And yeah.
Likewise, Zach. It was great. It was a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you for the questions. And I look forward to seeing you in Copenhagen soon.
Awesome. See you then.